I've lived 1,000 lives. I've piloted 1,000 souls. I've killed and fought and died just for another role.
This is the Happy Jacks RPG podcast, a roundtable discussion that's a mix of friendship, humor, unbridled enthusiasm, and tabletop RPG topics sent in from around the world.
Just for another role.
Hello, and welcome to Season 31, Episode 1 of the Happy Jacks RPG podcast. My name is Kimmy.
Oh, hi, I'm Courtney.
I'm Jay.
And I'm Kadave!
Huzzah! In today's episode, Batman writes in about their first TPK 40 years into TTRPGs. I mean, wait, make it, savor it.
You gotta wait till you're with someone special.
Yeah, exactly.
Build up that epic.
Yeah.
TPK.
Yeah.
Or wait for the right party.
There you go.
Yeah.
So just
Group of players.
kill them all. Jolene writes in with a LARP horror story. And Steven SoCal asks about problematic powers that mess with player agency and enjoyment. If you'd like to contribute a question or topic to the show, you can email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. And please write in because we need some emails. Like, we took a break for 2 weeks, and all of you took breaks for 2 weeks too and decided you weren't going to write anything in. So please start writing in emails. Thank you. It was our vacation, not yours. All right.
Homework.
Welcome to season 31. You have assignment already. Anyway, announcements. Welcome to season 31. We're going to be starting something new this season that we're going to try. Starting in November. That's in 2 weeks. About 2 weeks-ish. A week,
Wow.
yeah. And we're going to start having an indie designer of the month. So each month we will be featuring a designer from the indie community and mentioning them each week on the show where you can find their stuff. Our Patreons will be getting a copy of one of their games or the chance to win one of their games, depending on how expensive their games are. So, because we have like 70 Patreons. So, we're happy to buy a copy of a game for all of them if it's a very inexpensive game.
A cool perk.
Yes, but
That's
if
great.
it's a much more expensive game, then we will buy 1 or 2 copies and then raffle them off with all our Patreons. Hopefully, we will be able to have the designer also join us for a podcast during that month and maybe run a one-shot of one of their games. And this will not be pay to play, like always. Like Happy Jacks does not ever do sponsorships or paid promotion for game systems or publishers. So we will be finding designers through reputation or community suggestions, things like that. So we really want to make sure we're featuring little known designers, people who are doing great, cool, neat indie things, who are great people. And yeah, so that's going to be something that's going to be starting up very, very soon. So our first indie designer will be for the month of November. So if you have suggestions, reach out on social media or you can email at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. If you weren't paying attention a moment ago, eyes up here, class. Okay. And yeah, so I'm very excited about starting that. And it's going to be, I think, just another little thing for our Patreons. Our Patreons are what keeps us going. So thank you to all our amazing laser Patreon heroes. You're fantastic. And yeah, it'll be just like little perks here and there. Our patrons will also be getting an interview with a text interview with the designer as well. So I'll send them questions. You'll find out a little bit of extra stuff, and that'll be posted just for Patreons. So thank you all very much. And if you want to join our Patreon before the first designer, you can go to happyjacks.org/Patreon. All right. I think that's everything.
You did a great job.
Thank you. I feel
That was awesome.
new and like
I'm excited.
I know.
Very
Season
well.
31, all new and professional.
Yeah.
Nothing will go wrong. It will be great.
That crash everything.
Yeah.
Microphones fall down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Delightful.
Great job, everyone. That's a wrap.
And we're done. Turn in
All right,
next time for
season
season
32.
32.
Yeah, right.
All right. Mailbag number 1. Who wants to read the first email?
I'll take it.
Okay.
Hi there, Happy Jacks crew. I continue to love the show in its current incarnation. Thanks again, Kimmy, for taking it on and keeping it alive. Just wanted to write in about the first TPK I have had in a game. I have been playing RPGs for 40 some years, and while I wouldn't say I can remember all of my former games, last night I ran a party in what I'd hoped would be a one-shot using the Trophy Gold rule system, which is a rules-light RPG story game produced by Jason Cordova. I had one seasoned gamer from my old group and two new gamers, one of whom I hadn't gamed in 30 plus years, and their wife who had never gamed at all. I wrote a scenario based on a reversal of Watership Down, with the PCs and their village falling under attack by fearsome 8-foot-tall, cleaver-wielding Kerbanag rabbits modeled on the Flopsies from the Gamma World setting. Very cool. The game started fast since I had 4 hours to run a complete one-shot. We jumped into the game in media res, with the players facing off against the Kerbanag as they assaulted the player's home village. Since we had a limited amount of time to play, I did not do PC relationships up front, assuming, wrongly, that the PCs would work together. Instead, the best laid plans.
Yeah.
They acted completely independent of each other, often watching one another be attacked from a distance rather than put their own PC at risk. When their player relationships came up in-game, they constructed stories about how they didn't like each other and were actively combative with one another in character. Within the first hour of the game, one PC was killed when he, the husband who was the lone, helpful PC, tried to save another PC who was hiding from one of the killer rabbits in a barrel. Character generation is simple, so he generated a new character and continued play. The party continued to act as three separate, unaffiliated entities that just happened to be pressed together by circumstances. At the culmination of the game, there was a final showdown with the killer bunnies in an effort to recover an artifact they had stolen from the player character's village. While combat is far easier and safer with more than one player engaging, the PCs still failed to act with any sort of cohesion, with one of the players choosing to grab the loot and run off, while the other two PCs were fighting for their lives with the last of the bunnies. Everyone died.
I love that they died to bunnies.
Yeah.
Yep, good old Watership Down. While the players seemed to be really enjoying themselves, I had fun too. I had fun too. I was puzzled by the total attitude of self-preservation to the point of sacrifice of the other PCs that two of the players engaged in throughout the game. I have never played in a game where the party had zero cohesion, despite one of the players trying several times to help the other two players. One of the combative players, a seasoned gamer, did say afterwards that doing PC entanglements and relationships might have helped form a party that worked more as a party than a group of competing interests. While fun was had by all, it was difficult for me as a GM to watch combatants stretch out and degenerate, as the PCs left each other to fight to the death in battles that in a one-on-one context were heavily skewed against the player characters. Trophy becomes more dangerous the longer combats extend, and the PCs seem to be aware that they were throwing each other to the rabbits in a self-serving manner. I've never dealt with something similar in all my years of gaming. Any similar experience or feedback for me moving forward? I would love to hear it. Thanks again and happy gaming. Batman. Oh, wait a minute. Thanks again and happy gaming. Batman.
Well done.
Chef's kiss for that. That was amazing. Wow.
I got thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Okay, look. As a GM,
Mhm.
you got to be ready to throw out your plans. I've done game rating, and I learned the hard way many times that you can plan for contingency A, B, C, and D, and your party is going to do Q.
Yeah.
And you just have to yes and roll with it. As long as your players are having fun, who cares? Like, if that's the game they want to play, if they're having a good time, great. But if they're not having fun, and that conflict of them fighting with each other makes it a not fun scenario for the players, then you might have to railroad them a little bit. Give them some motivation.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's just how players be.
Yeah. I also wonder, like, it was meant to be a one-shot. I've noticed players behave very differently in one-shots. Like, especially, like, play them like you stole them. Like just, like, for that, it's like, okay, I'm going to make sure I survive, and I'm going to throw you under the bus. And if that's kind of, like, the vibe, like you were saying, that kind of gets rolling, especially in a one-shot. It's not not the same as if they're planning
Yeah.
a campaign where they're gonna try and like, oh nope, I'm gonna shove you into the rabbit's mouth so I can get away. That's
Right.
a very different scenario.
They don't have to worry about that next session, about continuity of those relationships for that next session, right?
Or the consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is
You left me in a barrel to the rabbits.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, I've seen players do the exact opposite reaction where they're like, oh, it's a one shot. Screw it. I don't care if my character dies, and they'll do the dumb.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's important, even when running a one shot, to just take 5 minutes to, try to get the players on the same boat. At the very least, like describe tone, describe, or as a GM mention, hey, listen, I would like you all to act cooperatively, find reasons to motivate your character to act cooperatively.
For sure.
And players still won't, they still won't act accordingly, of course, because, everybody's got their own fun, right?
Right. I think, definitely having the connections. It sounds like you sat down to a very different game than they ended up wanting to play, but it sounds like you had a good time too. So, I mean,
You pulled out a win.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It wasn't the win you expected.
Right.
That's
Now,
Everybody had fun.
yeah. Now I own Trophy, but I haven't played it.
I also have not.
Okay, this is one of the games where like a week ago I finally got time to like go through my email box, and I went through my spam, and I was like, oh, I have 25 games that I've backed on Kickstarter in the last year that are all sitting here waiting to be downloaded in
Yeah.
my spam folder. So this is one of the ones I actually got like there's like 3 of them that go together, of the Trophy games, and they were all there and downloaded. So I've been like looking through them, but I haven't played, so I don't know if this is a system where you can, like in D&D, if you end up with an encounter that's just too deadly, you kind of start pulling your punches a little, or
Yeah.
if you're rolling behind the screen, if you wanted to fudge your roll. I know some people hate that, but whatever. Or your
Ooh, you're
monsters.
playing with fire.
Yeah, I know. Sorry. Or your monsters just get like a little less adept at fighting. Their
Yeah.
tactics get a little worse.
Yeah,
They start
yeah.
spreading out a little more for no apparent reason.
Start rolling back that hit point number.
They start
you know.
lining up in front of the wizard with lightning
Right.
bolts.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Oops. Oh, my bad.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
that was a serious tactical error on my part.
Yeah. Oh, darn.
So you can always do that too if you're finding that you have a combat that is too effective, or that the players are not effective enough. Then kind of nerfing your side is always a go-to tactic, which is highly, highly controversial. I get it, but whatever. Have fun. If your players are having a great time, all dying, fantastic.
Yeah, just read the room.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And like, it's okay to check in with players and be like, you guys having fun with this? Do you like the difficulty? You want me to scale it back, or
Yeah.
It
It can get really hard when then combat just drags on, though.
yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can.
Yeah,
It
and
can.
that gets really hard. And I thought, and I might be mistaken, but I thought one of the cool things about Trophy was that it's not a rules necessarily like the rules light systems, but it's supposed to be a little bit more.
It's pretty fast.
Yeah, it's
My
supposed to be.
understanding.
Yeah, so if the combats are dragging on, then that I don't know. That seems like something's off a little there. I don't know if like the mechanics are off, or maybe the players are really just that terrible at tactics.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like
Or
the
the
bunnies.
dice just isn't going their way.
Yeah, it happens.
That
It
happens.
does happen
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
This could have gone the other way too if the dice was really going their way.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, they're just like, we've killed all the rabbits. We've saved the village.
We've,
Yeah.
even being in disparate parties, we've managed to luck our way out of it.
Yeah.
I think the important thing too is that, and I think the general tone of the story leads me to believe that you weren't being adversarial, which is a big part in, coming out of that situation all right. Like if you're rooting for your players and kind of what's the word, not celebrating every bad roll or every unfortunate event that happens to them. If you're commiserating with them, that goes a long way in keeping the things fun.
Yeah.
So-
Now the fun part of this. Similar experiences.
I have two.
Okay.
One was entirely my fault
Okay.
because I was a teenager and I decided to try and run a Star Wars game with the old West End D6 Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Good system though.
What?
I remember
That's a
that.
great system.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was just dating the timeline.
Oh,
where,
I
where
see.
I was. I wasn't complaining about the game.
Oh, I
was-
thought you were like the West End system.
No.
Okay.
But so I got this idea I'm going to sit down and I'm going to run an individual session for each player before everybody comes together. So it was
Okay.
like everybody gets their little prologue and then we have the actual game. And I did that, and I was all invested, and I had this whole idea, and it was going to be so much fun. And then they all get together, and one player decides, I straight hate that guy, and I'm going to kill him. And it happened. Like, he was like, oh, okay, cool. And he went into the airlock, and the other guy decides, like, I'm going to roll a thermal detonator in there and push the button.
Oh shit.
And I was like, great.
Oh my god.
There goes that whole story.
Wow.
Oh
Like,
man.
okay, all right.
Was the other guy super pissed?
A little. Everybody was super tired because this was one of those situations where we would get together on Saturday morning and play RPGs until Sunday afternoon,
Right.
and then stumble home half asleep in order to. Yeah, but it was a thing, and it just derailed the game, and I didn't know how to pull out of that nosedive as a 17-year-old.
I mean, even now, that's a
Like-
hard one to
Yeah.
pull out of.
Yeah.
Like, like wow.
Yeah, but I could at that point I could be like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay, well we're gonna give him a chance to notice, that kind of stuff." But I was like, just so floored by it at
Yeah,
the
you're
moment. I was like, I don't
Yeah.
know. And then the other time was a con game, so it was a one-shot scenario, and the guy running the game, I've talked about it on the show before. He was running essentially kind of a scenario that was a little bit like Saw. Like we sat down at the table and he's like, okay, no character sheets, you're all playing yourselves. Your inventory is whatever's in your pockets right now.
Interesting.
Like, let's go. And then we started a game and we all got kidnapped away to a horror house full of traps and various terrible things to try and get out of. And like if you said like, okay, I'm gonna jump up and pull myself up on the banister, and he's like, are you really gonna be able to do that? Like, and I'm like, not me. I'm not. I'll give somebody a boost.
Yeah.
That's fine. But in that scenario, he made it so personal to each of us that we had one player at the table that was like, I'm not going to do anything risky. Because, like, it got to the point where, like, decision paralysis started to take over in the group.
Yeah.
And so I, as a player, was like, I'm just going to try and push this along. Like, I'll do the risky thing. I'll put my hand in the creepy box
Yeah.
to see what happens. And he's like, well, your hand gets horribly attacked, or, things happen. So by the time we made it towards the end of the game,
Yeah.
I was, and he was using Dread for
I love Dread.
mechanics.
yeah.
Love Dread.
And he'd set up a whole separate table, and everybody had their own Jenga tower.
That's
And if your Jenga tower fell over, that means you die. But, if something happened and you lost an eye, he reaches in his backpack and pulls out an eye patch, and you have to wear it. So when you go over to do the Jenga, you've only got one eye. And then if you lost a leg, you have to go over there and, like, balance on one foot and do your Jenga, or kneel, or... So by the time we got towards the end, I was dragging myself over there in pieces, practically.
Oh.
Because I was the one that
Wow.
was like, we just got to keep moving
the
and get
only
out of
one-
this horrible scenario.
Only
Yeah.
taking risks.
And then the other players around the table all united and were like, no, she does this one. Because she hadn't taken any risks yet.
Oh.
And she's like, I'm not going to do that. And they're like, get your hand in that box. Like, it turned into a real...
Wow.
Like, yeah. And the interesting part was we
Oh.
had two people that had never played RPGs before.
Yeah.
Weren't even there for the con.
Oh.
They were just random tourists visiting LA, and they saw what's going on down here at midnight after we'd been out and had dinner and drinks, and then we came back and we're like, can we play a game? And everybody's like, sure. Come on in. And they are the most into it. They were just totally on board, like,
Awesome.
okay, yeah. But yeah, it was weird, and it got real contentious towards the end, and I was just like, I didn't mean for it to be like that. And everybody else is like, shut up, you're doing good. And I'm like, okay.
That's scary. Yeah, there's some boundary issues there.
Yeah.
That's not good. Other stories?
I don't have any actually. I mean,
Oh,
I've never
okay.
TPK'd. I haven't TPK'd. I've very rarely gotten into a situation. Well, or actually, okay. Points of contention between players. I run games for a couple of nonprofits. And we run them for kids. And so I started running a Kids on Brooms game. And
kids.
yeah, exactly. We've got 3 kids. I establish the circumstances. They're all kind of in their bunks, and we're doing this sort of, morning routine scene, right? So they're waking up in their magic school, and I tell one of the players as part of the mystery, oh yeah, things have been disappearing. Like things have disappeared from your room since you got here yesterday. There are some things they were there yesterday. They're not there anymore. Nobody's been in your room. At least not that you know of. And immediately, just off the bat, the other 2 kids go, oh yeah, my familiars took them. My familiar took them. And then the other kid goes, okay, my familiar took them too. And so this is like session 2 after we've been creating characters. And I'm like, I don't want to say no. The point of it is that they get to tell their stories and they get to craft who their characters are. And so I kind of just go, okay, here we go. How do you feel about these, these familiars taking all your stuff? It started their relationships off pretty roughly. But, through a little nudging and a little guidance, we were able to at least make it past that and get to the rest of the game. And I think I got to the point where I got the character that was who had stuff pilfered to the point where that character was able to just discover a secret about one of the other characters. And that was enough for them to kind of say, okay, you know what, that evens out the scales a little bit. So, I think the trickiest thing about a situation like that, just like you mentioned, is that during that Star Wars game, you probably just didn't have the experience to be able to kind of like,
for sure.
And improving through situations like that is often something that just comes with running the game over and over and over again, and running games over and over again, and just practicing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And luck.
Yeah.
And part of it's just like how much sleep you got that night or whatever. Is your
This
brain
is
in the
true.
point to think of a thing that will fix it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because, I ask a lot of folks what their barrier for entry into running games are, into game, GMing, and a lot of things, what they say is I'm just not quick on my feet. I'm not very good at improv. And that's a muscle you can practice, you can exercise.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So don't let that stop you. The only way you're going to keep on working on it is by doing it.
Yeah. So it's
Speaking of improv.
Sorry. That's such a kid thing to do, though. Like, mine did it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, immediately.
Yeah. Yep.
Just a bunch of
Kids are
thieving
the
familiar
most
things.
unpredictable.
It's like half of my day is, so-and-so did this. No. Da-da-da. And then like, yeah, oh, I want to do that too. Oh, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I love
They
that.
think differently from us.
They do.
They do.
They do.
And, oh, it can be harder. But so
More
speaking of improv,
Yes.
you actually reminded me of a time when I used to do this show with Knox Burf called Dungeon Master. And it was a kind of like a LARP on stage where like all the actors were NPCs. It was semi-scripted. There were beats to hit. And then we had 6 players come up on stage and they were the players in the episode. And you will probably hear me talk about the show a lot because I did it for several years. And you reminded me of a child who we once had in an episode who kicked a guy in the nuts because he grabbed him. And the kid got scared, and the kid didn't realize this is an actor. Don't do that. Anyway, so I don't have any like horrible TPK.
Real life, that's my purse. I don't know.
Yeah, pretty much. So I wrote an episode. It was loosely based on The Worst Witch. If you ever saw, we call it The Shoddiest Sorceress. And at the end of the episode, I was like the Winifred character. I was the klutzy, nerdy, like can't do anything right witch. And the party had to help me get through all my classes. And as part of the story, there was this guy who was just like the cool silent type, Ferguson. And I had a huge crush on him. And oh my gosh, can you help me like become friends with him? Or help me like woo him? And the way it was supposed to go was that I had this rival who was going to use a love potion on him. And we were going to have a fight. And in the end, he was going to be like, I'm not a prize to be won. How dare you? And like go off on his own, which was kind of a cool twist on it. And so that was supposed to be the end of the show. Supposed to be. So we get to the scene where it's, the school dance. And he talks with one of the players and then he turns to me. He's like, hey, you want to like go out? And I was like, that's not supposed to happen. What's happening? He's not, that's not how the ending's supposed to go. Turns out that one of the players like pulled him aside and handed him $20. And he was like, and the actor was like, yeah, I'm playing a teenage boy. If someone would have handed a guy like that $20 to
Yeah.
go out with a girl, he would do it. So I was like, okay, we're changing the end of the show. I guess we get together at the end. And like I said, sometimes you just gotta wing it.
Yeah.
And do the players what you want. Go for, I'm a big fan of rule of cool and rule of comedy. Just go have fun.
Player agency and all that.
Yep.
Fun stuff.
And sometimes you just gotta grab the steering wheel and give it a big twist and adjust your course.
Yes, absolutely. Oh man. I don't think I've had like a full TPK in a game that was like serious. Like we've done one shots that I think
Yeah.
are very similar to this, where we're like, it's a one shot, like go for it. One of my favorites where it really gets kind of extreme behavior is sometimes 10 Candles. When you play 10 Candles and it's like, you know you're gonna die at the end anyway. Like that's the point of the game. There's no way out of it. And sometimes that's very freeing. And so I've had some really fun experiences that are similar to this. But yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like I need to share a story. A lot of people have heard the stories I was going to share already. So, and we've had lots of good stories. So,
And if you want to hear the story, you're going to have to go back through every single episode of the Happy Jacks podcast, now available.
season 31. Yeah. Oh, man. All right. Thank you for writing in so much, Batman. I'm a fan. And
You know, that's got to be hard for Batman to schedule games. Like,
Yeah.
man.
But can you imagine the setup though?
I know, yeah. He's definitely got
He'd
like
have
the
like
full
one of
set.
the
of
LED tables.
Yeah,
and the
oh, yeah.
lighting and
Yeah.
the-
especially if he works nights. Like,
Alfred
Yeah.
there, like
Right.
painting 3D printed terrain. It's all it's happening.
Alfred's
for sure.
the dungeon master. He's
No.
like, Master Wayne, it is your turn. Did you look at your spells while you were waiting? No, you did not. All right, Mr. Wayne.
I feel like Bruce would be the GM.
Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
control freak with like
Yeah.
the whole Bat family,
But
like
like
all
every
his
voice
80
would be the
adopted
same.
children.
You know. Like, yeah.
Look,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is an RPG stream we can make.
Yeah.
Like Batman runs a session
Or
every game.
is it like Batman runs games for the Justice League?
Right.
Like,
Yeah, that's
Right.
it's an RPG waiting to happen.
I
It's-
feel, I feel like of all the Justice League, he wouldn't be the one who was into RPGs. Like, I don't know. I don't feel like that's his vibe. I can see Superman being super into that in like kind of a goofy, dorky way.
well, I mean, it might be fun for him to not be invincible.
Exactly.
Like, I'm gonna play the
I'm exploring a character.
complete. Yeah.
Yeah. That's Batman,
Oh,
like
that's a
RPG
show.
fantasies to
Yeah.
have powers, like
It
you know,
would be
right.
like,
non-gadget related powers.
it'd be like Damsels and Dice, like Kaylee's show,
Mhm.
Yeah.
but just
yeah.
with superheroes. I
Sure.
like this idea. I'll be like, call her, be like, Kaylee, so for your next show, Superman runs a game with the Justice League.
Yeah, it'd
We'll
be so
make
funny.
millions.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and now I'm like,
good.
now I'm like
I know, it's
spiraling off into like, okay, and then
I know.
But what?
I see.
There's something there.
Yeah.
Hold
a
on,
show
Batman.
there.
Which NPC is talking? Of course, it's the princess talking. This is the princess voice.
Every voice.
This is the Duke voice. It's just a dragon voice. Haven't you figured it out yet?
And then he does a scene where he's talking to like two different characters.
yeah.
You don't know what's happening. It's just him going profile.
What do you mean you rolled maximum for your HP? Swear to me! Anyway, sorry.
He got his
No.
good friend Bruce Wayne to record a bit.
Oh, Bruce couldn't make it again?
Oh,
Man, that guy
oh.
just never had somebody to. I know.
Oh,
so
good
good.
lord.
Oh my gosh. I did actually run a game dressed as Wonder Woman one time. That was fun. So, and it was a Justice League game. So
That's
it was
awesome.
very fun. All right. Email number 2.
Oh, I want to do this one because it's
Right.
about LARP, and I do a lot of LARPing. All right, here we go. Hey y'all, Jolene here, and I just listened to season 3, episode 18 with a LARPing horror story, and it reminded me of a story of my own. So this was pre-pandemic, as most gaming con stories of mine are, and maybe started back in 2016, where a friend and I both talked about how the LARPers always look like they're having so much fun. We are. And that we've never LARPed before. So we agreed to do our first LARP together, and we have like a buddy. Oh, and they would have a buddy. And then the next con rolled, and a 7th Sea LARP was going to be run. I love Three Musketeer stuff, so we both signed up for it. I decided to play a basically French swordman, but with my mask presentation and a very deep voice at the time, you can guess others were having the disconnect between the player and the character. The character had some backstory given to it. The Emperor's bodyguard in love with the daughter, and the premise seemed to be the Emperor of France is having a birthday party, and he's going to kill his traitorous daughter at the celebration. But so I'm guessing this is a small LARP when they're giving you that kind of motivation. Okay, but once it started, the people running it were like, "It's a party, go mingle."
Wait, pause. So, LARP expert,
Yes.
what makes you say that? Like, why?
Because normally with a larger LARP, you don't come in knowing characters and knowing what's supposed to happen. So it sounded like this was done at a con, which would be a one shot. So it'd be like, here's the premise. Sometimes they'd give you goals. And so like, here's the thing that you want to accomplish. Otherwise, do whatever you want with the character. That's why I assume it's something small.
That's interesting, yeah. That makes sense.
Let's see, where was I? Okay, but once it started, the people running it were like, "It's a party, go mingle." So it felt very directionless. I'd never LARPed before, so I was like, what do I do? That is a very common question for new LARPers.
That's like my ultimate, like nightmare. You're at a LARP. It's a party. Go talk to strangers. Good luck. And you're just like, but, oh, God damn it. Okay.
Well, this person brought a buddy, which is a good thing to do if you weren't sure. So you
Yes.
have someone who you can play with. All right. My friend got involved in this whole plot to kill the Emperor, and I was left in the dark about so much, just resolving to be like, stab the Emperor in the back because it would be something, right? The problem arose when I realized that despite this being a LARP, all the rules are just 7C first edition rules, aka the game with 500 plus skills and ultra powerful NPCs. So everything that the Cabal did to kill the Emperor was stymied by the powers of the NPC and the person playing him. In the end, the Emperor died, but there was no body, so whatever. My friend was annoyed and I did not have fun. Next con, they are running again, so I signed up again. Maybe this time it would be different.
I like that optimism.
Yeah. This person gives them a lot of chances, and good on them.
No, my question is like, was her friend annoyed at her, or was her friend annoyed at the situation with the Emperor? Like, I'm a little
Or both.
confused. Or
I
both?
think they were more
Like, you
annoyed. I think they were
convinced me to
annoyed
sign up for this.
at how
Yeah.
it was run.
Okay.
This sounds like it was a problem with how it was run.
Yeah.
Okay, what was it? Next con they were running again, so I signed up again. Maybe it would be different. This time I thought, oh, maybe if I get a wig, that would help with some of the gender confusion. Again, played the game, and luckily no confusion. But again, same rules, kind of aimless. Did not have fun. Signed up again and went all out. Full costume and wig, the same results. I was having fun bantering with the other characters, but as a whole, the sessions were meh. So,
Man.
oh, hey, I flipped to the wrong page. Fourth time round. I got a friend to do some makeup for me. She said, don't worry, I'll be subtle with it. Sadly, this time, had my least favorite wig and outfit, but again, the same results. I'm not sure if I like this LARP. Yet I still signed up for it in February 2019, which could be the last time they ran for obvious reasons.
Nobody can say you didn't give it the good
Yes.
old college try.
Good on you for
Yeah,
giving it a
yeah.
try.
You gave it a try.
There are lessons to be learned here, and we can talk about that after.
Fifth time's charm.
Like me and Fate.
Oh.
All right. I went all out. I did my own makeup, went very femme with it, and had my best wig on, and even bought some breast forms to wear. I loved how I looked, and I got many compliments from friends too. The game was, again, meh. In the last session, they added a character from Rokugan, and this time it was, I don't even know what Rokugan
Yeah.
is.
Okay.
This time it was
It's
like
Legend
full.
of the Five Rings.
Yes, it was full Legend of the Five Rings in 7th C, and folks, they should not be blended. The styles do not mix, in my opinion. I don't think it's just your opinion, sweetie.
No.
All right, afterwards, my friend said, every time you play this game, you say you're not sure if you like it. Why do you keep playing it? Well, a year after that, I came out as trans, so there's the happy ending to playing this game that wasn't really fun, but I kept going back to 4 reasons.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so game-wise, after every session, the people running it would talk about, we're also running a Werewolf the Apocalypse LARP later on, and here's the Facebook group where you can continue the story between sessions. I joined the Facebook group, and I can tell you they brought up the 7 Cs exactly 0 times since I joined to the date of their last game. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this pretty easy to figure out story. Love, Jolene. Update. So I mentioned that 7C LARP was using first edition tabletop rules. And like the second game I went and looked. And the LARP rules officially exist for that game, and they are way easier than whatever we were using. And I'm eternally baffled why they went with the tabletop rules with a full-ass character sheet. Because LARP and tabletop run very differently.
Yes.
So,
Maybe that's just what somebody knew. Like, it seems
I'm
weird.
guessing it's a lack of experience.
Yeah.
Because some tabletop things can work with LARP and other things can't. For example, physical representations of physical capabilities. Like, yeah, in my LARP, I play a sorcerer who can walk through a wall. Can I do that in real life? No.
Oh.
No, unfortunately. I mean, not without a lot of physical pain and damage to a building. But, you know, there's some things that are easier to represent in a tabletop because we're using our imaginations and our characters can do things that maybe we physically cannot do. I think it's really cool to explore your gender through LARP. I've had friends who I met at LARP who came out as trans after knowing them for a year or so because they took time and they explored a new gender as their character. And they're like, yeah, I really like this. I feel comfortable in this. And they've been so much happier since. So good on you. You have a lot of patience to give this LARP a try. It is not your fault or the player's fault. This is definitely a poorly run LARP that just, I mean, maybe they were new at it. And sometimes you have to do things wrong before you can do it right.
Yeah. It gave you a great way to explore, though, and that's one of the best things about tabletop games is it too. It also lets you kind of like do that exploration, but without the costumes,
Yeah.
which is I'm constantly torn about that because I love costumes, but I also love
Me too.
not putting costumes on for
Right.
2 hours because it's a very long process.
Especially doing makeup, wigs, contact lenses, all that stuff. So this reminds me of a story that I have about it was a Vampire the Masquerade LARP, and it was here in LA, and a bunch of my friends did it. And to start this game, they give you a character to play for like your first 3 games before you can make anything original. And I was like, okay. So I got my stuff, and it was actually a very difficult character to play. So I have this really cool outfit. I figured out my character. I go there. Everyone was super nice, lovely people. And I had a great time for about 2 hours, and then I was bored. And I realized that, like, they gave me this impossible task of, like, oh, you need to confront the prince about how they killed your child. And I'm like, we're in Elysium. What am I supposed to do? I can't hurt them.
Yeah.
Like, do you expect me to call them out in front of it? Like, what do you want me to do? It was a rough scenario to be thrown into. And sometimes the LARP just isn't for you. And it's not that LARP as a whole isn't for you, but sometimes that particular LARP is not for you.
Yeah.
Vampire LARPs, not my thing. Tabletop games, love them.
Yeah.
Post-apocalyptic LARPs, there's a huge national one called Dystopia Rising. I hear lots of good things about it. I just have no interest in zombie apocalypse LARP.
Nope.
It's not my thing.
Nope.
So what I would advise is like continue exploring LARP. Just do a different one. See what else is in your area. All else fails, start one yourself.
Yeah.
Start something that interests you, and it's a lot of work. You got to be prepared for that. And usually a lot of drama, but it can also be a lot of fun and very rewarding and a great way to build a community.
Right. Well, and Jillian has great contacts and knowledge of safety tools too. So
yes.
that's a fantastic way to start. If you're gonna start a LARP, being an expert on safety tools and running games that are welcoming and safe for players is a fantastic place to start. So I would be in Jillian's LARP. Come run it in LA.
Yeah. Happy Jacks, the LARP.
Oh, that's
The LARP, the
that,
movie.
No, yeah, we don't
I've been
want.
playing that game for
Yeah.
a lot of years.
We want Happy Jackers to LARP. We don't want Happy Jacks the LARP.
LARP.
That would just be us
Okay.
sitting and drinking and
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
burping into the microphone. We don't do that anymore. I have to
Dashed
say,
my hopes upon the rock.
I know. I approached someone to be a guest this season on the show. I'm not gonna say who they are. They were like, "Well, is there still burping on the show?" And I was like, "Well, no, not really anymore. Then I will be on the show." It's like, oh wow.
Maybe it's something that just grosses them out.
No,
you know, just
absolutely,
certain noises
totally fine. And it is a point that has come up in many a review, but it was just kind of funny that that's like so our brand. That it's like people are just aware of it. It's like, we're slowly changing as I drink more. Okay.
Y'all have any LARP stories or thoughts?
I've
on
never
this?
LARPed, actually.
Really?
Well, just
I
haven't really had the
Drag you into my
opportunity.
world of LARPing.
I tried one once and it was absolutely horrific. And I was like, yeah, no, going back to dice. That's a happy place for me.
That's fair. I mean, but I would suggest if you hear about something that if your friends are doing it and they're having fun, that might be a good place to start. Like I used to hate D&D and tabletop games because I had really bad experiences when I was a teenager. And I didn't come back till I was in college because I heard about my friends having so much fun at their game. And I'm like, I want to have fun with you guys too. And then I tried it. Now I love it. And here I am today doing this podcast with the rest of you. So
Now, do you
You
think?
never know.
Yeah. Do you think, Dave, you'd have a different experience now that you've done Ren Fair for a bunch of years?
I don't think so.
No?
Like
Oh.
it was horrific in a lot of the ways that we don't like things to be among people. Like
Oh, okay. But it wasn't the LARP, the idea of LARPing. It was
well,
like the
the
LARP
game
is
itself
terrible.
was bad,
Oh.
and then the people were also bad.
oh, that's a
Okay.
terrible combo.
And it was
Yeah.
just all bad.
Yeah.
There wasn't ever like I was never engaged in a story. I was wandering about in a park, and I was like, I'm looking for, because basically I was given like, find this person. They will help you on your journey to do X, Y, and Z. I don't even remember what the points of that were because I never got there because I never found that person.
Oh.
I spent 4.5 hours wandering around like a 15-acre park trying to find that person who I don't know if they just didn't show up that day. Like,
Oh, that is.
nobody could help me. Nobody pointed me in. I would go ask people like, hey, have you seen anybody that looks, like they've got tall white hair and they do magic? And I was told, no, I don't know who you're
Oh.
talking about. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, good luck.
Have a nice
I'm off to find
day.
the next group of people.
What was the
Yeah,
genre,
that
if
is
you
fun.
don't mind me asking?
It was fantasy.
Fantasy
Yeah.
LARP.
We should all like en masse go to a LARP, like a big LARP, so we don't ruin everybody's day, as like a massive extended family. And like we were just like have characters that were all like the second cousins twice removed of so and so, and like just like
And we just all call each other cousins.
yeah.
Oh, cousin!
Well, in the LARP that I'm in that I just started dragging, well, I didn't drag Nick to, it's just coincidence. He's going, there's a whole group of people and they're like traveling nomads and stuff, and they all call each other cousin anyway. We're all family, so there you go. You can be part of that caravan.
We all have like an obnoxious last name that's just like super fun. All right. I'm excited.
I could talk about LARP forever, but we have another mailbag
okay.
item, don't we?
Whatever.
Yeah.
Meh. We'll get to it. All right. Mailbag number 3.
All right. Dearest douchebags, I'm bringing it back. I have a question for you regarding problematic powers, which I found to interfere with player enjoyment and verge on the loss of player agency. While this is mostly couched from a D&D perspective, I feel like it can apply to other systems and genres, at least to some extent. I already kind of agree. There are problem things like that. Over the years of both GMing and playing, I've kept a loose list of powers, abilities, and effects that have either driven me nuts as a player or strike me as dangerous to player enjoyment. The general theme is that these tend to be powers which don't give the players many or any abilities to respond, and thus lead to turns navel-gazing and or fretting over how they don't seem to have any way to respond. Most of the examples are going to be tactical and combat-oriented, but I feel like they can apply even in other areas. Basically, anything that turns your turn as a player from a choice between various good options of action to being forced into inaction and or a single bad action. Examples I run into include invisibility and darkness powers, where players are unable to even target an adversary with any of their own powers or attacks. Even if encounters aren't actually difficult, this kind of thing wastes precious spotlight time for the players, as they're largely unable to do much, other than maybe burn down the room or something similarly drastic. Even in non-combat situations, the players may feel their confidence privacy has been violated if an invisible enemy spied on them and is unusually well prepared for them, or something like that. Number 2, excessive speed or flight, where, similar to above, players are often unable to reach or affect their adversary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just some guy flying overhead like, I've got rocks. You can't get me because none of you brought a bow.
Yep.
Like,
That's why you always bring a sharpshooter.
now I want to play that character. What's your attack? I fly over people and I drop rocks. That's pretty good. That's
great.
it's perilously close to my Mr. Smiley that I played for. I guess that was kind of a LARP. The superhero court that we did at the con.
That was a LARP.
Yeah.
It totally was.
So
It was
that was that was positive, but I played a guy that was just completely invulnerable. So he was a supervillain because he just didn't care. Like he's like, I need some money. I'm gonna go take some money. What are you gonna do? You gonna put me in jail? All right, I'll just wait. I'll get out eventually.
That was a pretty amazing. That was a very fun, like, I guess, yeah, it was a LARP,
Yeah.
but it's like also a weird improv exercise. It was a very cool but weird thing in the middle of the night at a con.
Yeah. All right, number 3. Sorry, back to your points. I'm here, I swear.
Yeah.
Immunity to damage, where players have the satisfaction of hitting an enemy only to have that achievement yanked from under them. While typically there's some workaround, i.e. don't use the fire spells you're specialized in, or that great axe, but do use your 1d4 silver dagger on the werewolf, or cold ray on the fire elemental, this can make your level 10 character feel like they've regressed to level 1, which usually isn't much fun. I think back to one of the horror stories earlier in Season 30, where players were getting frustrated not being able to damage invulnerable enemies. Yeah, that's rough.
That's what invulnerable means. Like you're
Sure, yeah.
just gonna sit there and wait for you to get tired.
You're going to get tired eventually, and then you're going to get it.
Step on your foot. It'll be great.
Watch out. You're going to stub your toe on my leg.
I want to run a game where everybody has one, like, mostly useless attack, and that's the only thing you can do. And you have to figure out how to work as a team to take down the bad guys.
Back to the recurring discussion earlier in Season 30, imprisoning players and or taking away their stuff. I was here for that discussion. Ha! Well timed. Oftentimes, this has the effect of mechanically de-leveling them or rewinding the progress they've made thus far in a campaign. I distinctly remember being a player in a D&D campaign with 3 to 4 fighters, paladins, bards, thieves, and 1 cleric, me, where we routinely were fighting flying invisible immune vampires.
That's so specific.
And generally
It's a
had
great
no way to
combo.
do anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just the GM like, you know what? You guys are too successful.
You know that, like, his list just came from that one game.
Right. Yeah, the one encounter.
Like, he's like, I hate invisible things and flying things and things that are in...
It's just one specific horrible day. That's all it takes, right?
Well, this is from the DM's perspective, or the GM's perspective, too. It's just,
Yeah.
why do I keep pitting my players against invisible, flying, invulnerable vampires?
He did
can't
that.
help
It's the one stat block I have.
Yeah.
No, I... it's a funny idea.
Yeah. Oh, hey guys, guess what's in the room? Doesn't look like there's anything in the room.
Was that a rock?
And you just hear giggling from the ceiling.
That's you have to get really creative. Like, can I roll to see if I ate garlic for lunch, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, your players are just constantly dousing themselves in holy water baths. And...
There's still more.
There's more.
Yeah, let me finish. I gotta keep it together. Here we go.
Okay, breathe.
Even in other instances where your players may have some utility powers, sometimes they feel stressed about when to memorize certain spells just in case they run into something like this. Either you end up prepping to combat some particular challenge, and you don't have to use it, but now you're missing some other capabilities which would have been more useful, like damage or other utility. I sometimes use these judiciously if I know one or more of the players has ways to get around this. Scrolls of glitter dust, night vision goggles, speed or flight options. But even then, you run the risk that players forget they have it or didn't memorize that spell that day. I don't necessarily avoid these entirely, but I am generally hesitant to use any of them. Obviously, there will be ways to use these things effectively, but I'm usually loath to risk it. Note, my concerns about these abilities are solely from the perspective of GM. If players have or use similar capabilities, I'm all for it. Yeah, okay. I'm curious if you, A, have similar things you avoid, B, have suggestions on how to use these powers without leading to player frustration, C, feel that theater of the mind or more narrative RPGs, like PBTA, etc., are less susceptible, D, do you fundamentally disagree with the premise of this email? Or E, is this just a decent example of why things like D&D's fancy and magic system are bad? Thanks as always, Steve in SoCal. Okay. I don't disagree with you, Steve. There are powers that are a problem. I tend to run into the powers that negate player agency myself as the ones that I try and avoid the most. Right? Like mind control and things like that. They suck. Like, it's not fun for the player. The rest of the party doesn't dig it because now they're like, oh, I can't trust anybody, and you just end up wasting a whole session.
Yeah.
My fear about mechanically difficult things to deal with are if you don't give them a heads up ahead of time, then it's always going to be like that, right? Like, if you know that they're all right, party, you're hired to go take care of this nest of vampires on the edge of the city. And here's some things you might know about vampires. Okay, right? But if it's just constantly springing the flying giggle pack on people.
During, like, a random
like
encounter.
just
Invisible flying giggle.
Invincible
Throwing
and
vulnerability.
Yeah.
Flying giggle pack.
Then that's the issue, right? Like, most player groups would have a way to deal with one of those problems.
Yes.
All of those problems simultaneously, you keep cutting down the percentage of people that can do anything, and then people get upset. It is kind of the problem with a lot of the tactically combat-focused games, because if you don't have anybody in the party that can do that, now they have to figure out a workaround, which sometimes is fun for them to try and, jury rig up a way to make it work. Like, okay, well, we're going to put together this ballista with your silver knife on the end and shoot it in the sky or whatever. Like, that's cool, right? Like,
Sometimes you just gotta think outside the box.
Yeah. I think it's important to stretch your party and to make them face challenges, things that feel challenging to them, things that are a little bit out of their wheelhouse. As a GM or a DM specifically, that seems this is a thing that you run into a lot in Dungeons and Dragons, is you have to be careful when you're putting together a combat situation. Is you have to really okay, what are my players capable of? What are, what baddies do I want to throw at them? So, like you were saying, you have one or two of these things that are challenging that they, can overcome, either because you give them a heads up, like, you're fighting vampires, you have to see a wanted poster with a vampire on it, and you go there. I don't know why I became Bane for a second. I think we're just on this,
This whole
Batman,
thing.
theme. But I think you also have to be really careful that you're not coddling them. I think that you have to, have those challenges. So, like you said, one is fine. And yes, sometimes they're annoying, and it can be annoying if you're the player who's not going to be super effective. But honestly, the player who is super effective is probably not the one who gets highlighted very often. It can be just as important to have those challenges so someone has their moment in the spotlight of being, the hero. So sometimes you have to, help one and you play into some of their other disads for the other players.
Yeah, I agree with you on a lot of that, because reading this, I was like, oh, I'm in the D category where I fundamentally disagree with the premise. Because if I'm fighting something and it has no special skills, no special abilities, it's going to get real boring real fast.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't like when fights are too easy and when we always win and no one ever gets downed. Like, part of the fun of role-playing for me is getting my ass handed to me. It is fun to go down. It is fun to be on the brink of death. It is fun to be in danger, because that's not something you get to have in real life. I like that thrill personally. So if there's no challenge, of having conditions sometimes, like I would get very bored.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If monsters or opponents don't have a shtick of some sort, right, and you're kind of just trading blows and trading
Yeah.
blows, and I hit this and they hit back and I hit back and I hit back.
Especially when it devolves into the Shaun of the Dead, don't stop me now. Like, just where you're just all standing around hitting the thing.
Kind of wailing on
That's
something,
not
right?
fun.
Yeah,
right?
that's not
Am
particularly
I going to be
interesting.
the one that gets enough damage to kill it this time? I
Right,
don't know.
right, yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I generally don't have things like that I avoid, but I do try to think of just other ways to alter or ramp up a fight. If for some reason a creature ability or a foe gets problematic in that way, where the players just can't touch them, you know what I mean? I run a lot of pre-made modules, and so sometimes that can be kind of tricky. Because circumstances are kind of written, but oftentimes I found that even when I'm running something that's already been written, if I'm going to like mold an encounter, I'll add environmental stuff, just some things that the players can use. You can't hit that vampire, but you can, there's a pillar over there, and this character with the 18 strength would probably push it down over it, to pin it down at the very least, or something like that, so.
Oh look, a brazier. Maybe if you
Yeah.
light it on fire and
Yeah.
somehow draw the vampire to now you have
Yeah,
fire.
exactly.
Yeah.
that garlic delivery cart.
Right.
Yeah, like
yeah.
challenges are great, but you also have to give them potential solutions sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Because-
Oh, it's a steak factory. And you just
How
happen to be.
convenient.
Oh, you didn't know. You ran into the building for safety.
Yeah.
It's just wooden stakes all over
mean,
the place. I don't know.
There was a good point brought up. This actually happened in my D&D game last night, where we were told, oh, we're going on the road, we're traveling. We thought it was going to be a chill episode because we just had a bunch of combat recently. And it turned out we were fighting these elementals, and there was a storm, and it was a whole big thing. And I'm sitting there with my cleric, and she's like, I did not prepare the right spells for this. And sometimes that just happens. Like, that's the gamble you take as a mage. You don't always know what you're going to fight. Sometimes you do, and it can be very well prepared, and sometimes you don't. And that's just how the game is.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Are we done with that? Or, I mean, there were a bunch of
so.
questions at the end there.
Some of the things you want to avoid, have
I-
suggestions how to use these powers.
Answer to number C for me, I feel like PBTA and those kind of games, that doesn't happen as much.
Yeah.
Because it's just about everybody's just coming up with something.
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, well, and then if you were playing PBTA against invisible flying immune vampires or whatever, however many adjectives they have, then they don't get to do anything unless the party rolls badly.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they're not that scary until you guys do something wrong. Like, okay, well, then let's come up with a plan. I'll throw you up there and you can grab it by the neck and pull it down. Or, I'll get this bar stool and stab it 4 times with the legs.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And sometimes when you do the one thing out of the box, it doesn't mean you can repeat it. Like this happened on Cast-Offs last week, which you can watch here on Happy Jacks RPG Saturday
Nicely
nights
done.
and on our podcast.
There's your $5.
Thanks. I get paid?
No.
Oh damn! It was invisible, imaginary $5
Yeah.
for everyone listening and with me.
In-game currency.
They
Yeah.
know. They know.
Yeah. But, so it's a piratey adventure, and a kraken attacked our ship. And I play kind of a bard whose all my skills are more social skills and like distraction and a little bit of crowd control. I don't really have combat skills. And I'm like, how am I supposed to help? And then I got this idea to like take some gunpowder and put it in a bag, and I dropped it on one of the tentacles. Then I used my little like flash paper to set it on fire. Cool. That worked once. The kraken was still alive. Now what do I do? So I really had to think out of the box. And sometimes you need to be prepared to have encounters that can be inclusive for all your players. And sometimes that's not going to happen, and they just have to think. And if you find that a player is in that situation where they're like, there's nothing I can do, you as the GM can do some Deus Ex Machina, or you can like, oh, look, this thing that you happen to notice this thing over here. Like you said, there's a pillar you can knock down. Like you as the GM can read the room and like offer ideas and offer, clues of other things they can do so they can feel like they're a part of it.
The worst thing I think you can stick your characters into is just a plain old room, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna lead characters into something, hey, have there be a box or a couple of barrels in there.
You're in a cement square cube of a
Yeah,
room.
yeah,
Black box
exactly.
theater.
There is a door leading out, and the door you came in from.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go nuts with a fight. No.
And a light bulb. But you know, sometimes
Yeah.
people will get creative.
Yeah.
That's actually the big problem I had when I tried Fate so many times, was how many times the game system devolved into, okay, there's the bad guy over there. It's going to be really hard for us to, like, I don't have anything I can do well enough that I can take out this big bad guy. So now it's going to turn into this game of, we're all going to sit here and create, like, this incredibly unlikely Rube Goldberg machine of plus twos until we have enough that we can do something. So, like, I'll be like, okay, well, he happens to be standing next to a pile of turpentine rags. Okay, plus two. And then the next person has to be like, well, and he's standing underneath a skylight, and, you know, the building next door is on fire. And there's a plus two. And then the next person, oh, well, you know, he's forgot that he's wearing a big, long canvas trench coat that's covered in wax. Oh, okay, there's another plus two. And then the final person goes, okay, I pull down the rope with the flaming brick on it, and it lands in the turpentine rags and lights them on fire, and then it lights his coat on fire, and then he's struggling, he doesn't know what to do. Then we can tackle him. It's like,
That's a lot.
I don't want to spend an hour coming up with these incredibly unlikely things to make the bad guy go.
As a,
Like
G-
that-
as the GM, you got to find that balance between letting your players be creative and come up with a solution, and you also still not letting it go completely off the rails and giving them some clues.
Sure.
Doing Dungeon Master, sometimes, you know, as the NPCs, we would know what's supposed to happen and what the solution is for the players. And if they can't get there, then it was on us to lead them there.
Yeah.
Like, hey, maybe if you cast a spell to do this, that might help. Wink, wink. Or, hey, what's that over there? Oh my gosh, do you see that thing right there? Like, maybe the players didn't notice. So, you know, as a GM, you got to kind of balance that out.
You sneak
I
in
think
that
that-
whole like, oh yeah, by the way, make me that wisdom perception check for reasons, you know.
Yes. Hint, hint.
The other side of the coin, you can provide a scenario where the apes from Planet of the Apes are on horseback and they're chasing down the players, and the player that's playing Indiana Jones looks at the ape on horseback and goes, I don't know. I don't think there's anything I can do here. And we're like, you're Indiana Jones. You have so many things you could try and do to this ape before they shoot you. Like, what?
Yeah.
Do you want to try and shoot them? You have a gun?
Yeah.
You want to try and use your whip?
Yeah.
Like,
As a player, though, sometimes I want to make suggestions to people. I'm like, oh my god, the obvious thing to do is to do that. But at the same time, it's not my character to play. It's there.
Yeah.
So like, how do you figure out like when to make suggestions versus stepping on someone else's role?
right.
So I say give them a try, and then maybe if they ask for help or they need help, you're like, oh hey, you have this, you have that. I constantly forget that my D&D character has like the Ray of Frost.
Oh sure.
I think I've used it once, but because I don't use it.
Yeah.
And then someone's like, you have Ray of Frost. Oh yeah. Okay, I shoot him with Ray of Frost. I can't fight this fire elemental.
Yeah.
Pew, 1d6.
And slow them down.
And slow them
Oh, yeah.
down. I just forget that I have it.
Yeah. All right. Are we set?
I think so.
Okay. All right. So I did go deep diving down the games that I think the Justice League would play.
Ah,
So Blue Beetle would 100% just be a straight D&D nerd, like old school DM, a little bit of like a rules lawyer and like a little bit like combative, but not too bad. Harley would run Fiasco. Batman would run Champions because he'd just get to make his dream team. They wouldn't have to be adopted of orphans, and like he'd just be able to make, and they'd all have superpowers. Dick would play Thirsty Sword Lesbians. So Wonder Woman would play Starscape because it's all about trust and like that stuff. And I'm just saying that because it's my game and I want her to play my game. And I think Superman would play Monopoly.
Now, what would be great is if they were all playing like Kids on Bikes or Tales from the Loop. where they have no powers. They're just kids and they're no power.
Yeah.
Wait, you mean I can't? Wait, no. Wait, what?
Yeah.
I'm
do
gonna
you
fly
not
after that
fly?
guy.
Yeah.
It's a role-playing game, everybody.
Yeah.
Isn't it cool to
I
not
can't
be
commu-
yourselves?
I can't communicate with the fish in the tank.
That's
Yeah.
the problem that I had. I ran Tales from the Loop for youth,
Yeah.
and they were just like not able to grok it.
Oh, sure.
The
yeah.
whole concept that like kids could go on an adventure, like and do
Yeah.
things without adults around, like it just didn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were just like, well, can we go get the police or our principal? And I'm like, no, you really, like, this is a problem you need to deal with. Why? I would deal with this by going to tell my mom.
Right. Yeah. Telling the authorities.
You know, when bad things
yeah.
happen, you go to an adult. I'm not stupid. I'm too young to figure this out. Therefore, I go to. Yeah, I mean that's just
That's
being a little
fascinating. I never
sensible.
even thought of that. I've never
Yeah.
played those games with kids.
Yeah.
I've only ever played
Yeah.
with adults. So yeah.
It
Yeah.
was, without people that have the experience of like envisioning that Goonies and
Mm-hmm.
the Brat Pack and you know
Right,
those movies and stuff from the 80s where like, or living through the period where like,
Yeah. You could just
Okay.
ride your bike out.
yeah,
in the
it's
middle of town.
it's a summer
Yeah.
day, you're just gonna go out and
Yep.
then you just knew you had to be home when the streetlights came on for
Yeah,
dinner.
yeah.
Like
Yep.
that's kind of without that experience, they just didn't work.
All right. Thank you for joining us for season 31, episode 1 of the Happy Jacks RPG podcast. My name is Kimmy.
My name is Courtney.
My name is Jay.
And I'm Kadave!
Thank you to our chat mod, James V, and to our amazing Patreons who keep us ad-free and independent. If you want to join their amazing ranks, you can go to happyjacks.org/Patreon, and you'll be getting some goodies with our indie designer of the month in November pretty soon. And yeah, please also send us emails. We need emails. happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's the email address. And today we're going to leave you with a song. We're going to leave you with a song called The Pub That We Call Home. It's by a group called the Poxy Boggards, and they are longtime friends of the pod. And yeah, so enjoy, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Toodaloo.
Bye, everybody.
Well, allow me to tell ye of a place dear to heart, of each sailor and soldier, both Slavic and smart. Each face in that place is familiar and warm, where each traveler weary retreats from life's storm.
'Tis this pub that we call home, and from her we oft times may roam. But our respite we'll find in a pint, maybe 9, in this pub that we call home.
Though married but not merry, bearing lowly life's load, and suffering the chafing of my long-winded road, entombed in the womb of this free house at Bath, her walls provide shelter from my wife's wicked wrath.
'Tis this pub that we call home, and from her we oft times may roam. But our respite we'll find in a pint, maybe 9, in this pub that we call home.
In the hours when life sours and I'm weary and beat, to the hopping and copping I need to retreat. With a pale cup of ale and my good mate's concerns, I'm rested yet weary to the battle return.
'Tis this pub that we call home, and from her we oft times may roam. But our respite we'll find in a pint, maybe 9, in this pub that we call home.
With the raging of aging and my last breath I crave, please pull up the floorboards and dig me a grave. As you rouse and carouse, pour an ale on the floor. If you listen with care, you may hear me cry more.
Tis this pub that we call home, and from her we oft times may roam. But our respite we'll find in a pint, maybe 9, in this pub that we call home. 'Tis this pub that we call home, and from her we oft oft times may roam, but our respite we'll find in